Hello and welcome to The Insider. I'm Lisa Adams. Welcome to our viewers and our listeners on the radio and on our podcast. Today it's all about recruiting for the Erie Police Department and efforts specifically to recruit more women, a focus since this is Women's History Month. My guests today are Lieutenant Tom Lennox, who is Recruitment Coordinator for the Erie Police Department, and Patrol Officer Kayla Pound. Welcome to both of you. Great to have you here. We focused on this topic before. It's kind of an annual visit, I think, to talk about diversity and recruitment. But I know it's particularly not been an easy time to be a police officer, but it's fulfilling for those who make it a career. So Kayla, what made you decide to get involved in becoming a police officer, and how long have you been involved with the Erie Police Department?
I think the best way to really make a change is to, do something about it, get involved. And I don't think, to me, there's no better way to do that than to be a police officer. To be out there and serving the community is big on my heart.
Yeah, so you've been on the force for a couple of years now?
I got hired with the Erie Police Department in November of 2021, so about a year and a half now.
So were you doing police work somewhere else first, or was this your first foray into this kind of work?
I had worked for a couple smaller departments prior. I did about 2.5 years at Lawrence Park Township Police Department, and then both Crawford and Erie County Sheriff's offices before that.
So give us a sense of what the most difficult days are like for you on the job. I mean, are there ever days that you think, why am I doing this?
To me, the hardest things to deal with is anything involving kids. Things where kids are victims. To me, that's a rough day. And I think anybody I work with would agree with me on that.
Yeah, and talk about your best days then, on the other hand, the best days for you on the job.
I love it at the Erie Police Department. Like, I wake up, I'm excited to go to work. We work with an amazing group of people from top down. So, I love my job.
Sounds like every day is a good day for you on the job. So, we had to put a microphone on you to do the program here today, and you've got so much stuff on you. I don't think I could do the job because I couldn't have all that stuff hanging on me. So talk a little bit about your uniform and everything you have to be prepared and to be safe on the job.
So we all, when we're out and about on the streets and stuff, have, the vest, your duty belt. It's got anything you would ever need, handcuffs, flashlights, radio. I don't have mine on me today, but we have body-worn cameras that are activated on every call. It's a lot of gear, but it's stuff that you need to get through the day successfully.
Mm-hmm. And after you become used to having it on, I'm sure you're not even really thinking about it anymore.
Yeah, it's like second nature at this point.
Yeah. Well, Lieutenant Lennox, I don't mean to talk around you here. You have been working on improving diversity on the force for a few years now. We've done a number of interviews about this. So how do you think women enrich the Erie Police Department, and how successful have you been at improving the number of women on the force?
Well, women, and I've said this on the show in the past, women on the job, is a game changer. We have a total of 8 women on the job out of 174 officers right now. And I can attest that every woman that we have on the job right now can do everything, if not better or more so than what a male, their male counterparts can do. Our numbers have been increasing in terms of the interest with the women in our community, and also there are women outside the community that's been reaching out to our department. The biggest hurdle right now is to get them to work up to that physical agility test so we can be more successful in bringing more women on the job.
Yeah, we'll talk about that test a little bit more. Just the night before we're taping this, there was a big meeting of fire and rescue personnel county-wide, and the mayor was talking about the fact that the city has lost people interested in doing the rescue work in the last few years, really since COVID. So how about COVID and the Erie Police Department? I know you guys had a time where it really traveled through the force, maybe more than once, some cycles of that. Have you seen any decline in interest because of that, because of people-to-people contact, or because, as Kayla mentioned, we know there's been an increase in our community in youth gun violence, where the victims are younger and younger and the perpetrators are younger and younger, and they're still getting their hands on guns. So have any of those things been a deterrent, and why should or shouldn't they be?
Well, actually, COVID during 2020, our numbers in the northwest part of the state, we were actually at a 65 to 70% increase as far as, potential candidates showing up for the test. So, when I did my research, checked into Pittsburgh, Philly, out east, their numbers were down about 35%. But, very proud to say that up here in the northwest part of the state, our numbers were actually high. And even comparing that to some of the national average, it didn't deter a lot of our candidates in our community to show up.
And I know you're also heavily involved in PAL, the Police Athletic League. There was just a big ball and celebration for that. And when you and I have talked in the past about PAL, I mean, there you're building relationships with young children in the community who could go on to do a job like Kayla. So are you starting to see the fruits of that piece of recruiting that really sort of starts young to make people have a better attitude about the police and to understand what you guys do?
Yeah, correct. To your point, I mean, it's very important and this is any profession, by the way, not just police work. We have the opportunity of hitting these kids younger, starting in 3rd grade. And I've said this before, that in about 10 years, they're not going to need a recruiting officer because, at that level, with the elementary, middle school, and now high school level, male, female, white, black, Hispanic, I mean, we're seeing a lot of interest at that age of basically they want to be police officers based upon the officers that they're surrounded with on a daily basis. So that's wonderful news in the long game.
Yeah, and not to go off topic, but when we talk about athletics, also just this week we reported on a new field, Bolitnikoff field being rebuilt, and how much that might do for morale of students or getting students involved in athletics and positive things. More of an effort to build those kids from the elementary to the middle up into the high school sports opportunities. Do you think that's a game changer too? Yeah,
I mean, and we talk about this at the elementary level, even the high school level. It's time to start bringing and instilling pride back to not only the schools but the community with regards to the football field. It gives a lot of those players and those athletes in soccer and football something to take pride in, with the renovation of that field. So, yeah, that's a wonderful thing.
And track and field, too. Maybe get them ready to take that agility test coming down the road.
Absolutely.
All right, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about what a typical day on patrol is like for Kayla Pound and hear what role women officers may play in some of the special units that the Erie Police Department is creating. We hope you'll stay with us. Welcome back. We're talking about efforts to improve diversity in the Erie Police Force, specifically recruiting more women. My guest again, Lieutenant Tom Lennox, Recruitment Coordinator for the department, and Patrol Officer Kayla Pound. So, Kayla, tell us what is a typical day like for you on patrol? You come in, do you get some marching orders, head out in the car?
So every morning you get there, you get ready. I look like this for what we call roll call. We'll go over any new special orders that have come out, any new wanted people, if there's a new stolen vehicle to keep a lookout for. That'll all be read there. The street supervisor will read your lineup for the day, telling you which car you're in, if you're with a partner, if you're by yourself. And then you go out and answer calls for service. You can really make as much out of it as you want. Traffic stops. You can look for wanted people.
And so if there aren't specific calls that you're responding to, you kind of have a sector that you're patrolling then throughout the day?
Correct. So you have Upper West, Upper East, Lower West, and Lower East, and then they have roving cars, which we call alpha cars, and they handle your in-progress crime, domestics, gun calls, stuff like that.
Yeah, you mentioned it's tough when you are on a call that involves young victims or young suspects. Have you seen a change in that just in the short time that you've been on the job?
I have not come across a ton of that, thank goodness, as far as child victims and child calls go. So.
And when you are paired with an officer, are you paired with a male police officer or another woman police officer, and should it matter?
So it all depends on who's doing the detail for that day. We don't have a ton of females in patrol, so if I get paired with a partner, it's usually a male officer. But I mean, it doesn't matter. You're still answering the same call.
And Lieutenant Lennox, you mentioned before we started recording that Kayla's moving into the SWAT team?
Well, I always tease Kayla. She came highly recommended prior, to her actually taking the oath with the City of Erie Police Department. The other law enforcement entities that she worked for, she was the top performer of male and female, and I take pride. And I know that she takes pride, and I'm putting a lot of pressure on her, but I do believe in my soul she will be the first female SWAT team member, because she's got all the ingredients.
It's aspirational for you. It hasn't happened yet. That's what you're saying. All right, so I know you don't have to have a college or law enforcement degree to join the Erie Police Force, but do Erie's women officers usually come via that route? Have they had an academic approach to law enforcement first?
Well, we're one of the very few departments in the state of Pennsylvania. We don't require a college degree, although we do provide an educational bonus if you do have a associate's, a bachelor's, the whole way up to a master's, and in some situations a PhD. Fortunately with our department, the only thing that you need to do to qualify is to have a GED or a high school diploma. You don't need and be 21 years of age, obviously, to take the test.
So how is it determined, in what division a woman is assigned? I mean, does it happen through seniority or seeing what aptitude a woman has on the job, whether she should be in detective work, whether she should be inside, or how do you decide that? And of course, I know you have some other divisions that you're creating, so will women play a role in those?
Absolutely. And to Kayla's point, and I love the way that she answered that question, with the difference between male or female, would you prefer this? I mean, it's equal across the board. So to that point, every officer that gets hired with us, all of them start in the patrol division. Once they get some time on, I mean, you can't be a detective until you understand what's going on the street level. The new units that we are incorporating in our department with the juvenile unit, which is up and running, by the way, the mental health crisis unit will be up this spring. Whoever is the most qualified, once the interviews come out, regardless of years of experience, would be the officer selected for that unit.
And mental health crisis unit, I mean, is that something where women bring some unique skills or not necessarily so? It just depends on what the officer's skill set is, male, female, or otherwise.
I think it depends on what the officer's specific skill set is. Going back to women, I mean, they're just better communicators. There are a lot of calls throughout my 20-year career that when I had a female, with me, riding with me, they not only got to have the physical capabilities for the happening now type situations, but a lot of calls that we go to, a lot of our citizens, they gravitate right towards the female officer to where they feel more comfortable with. Your domestics, a lot of times, crimes involving children, which none of us officers like. Women have that innate skill set already coming onto the job as an officer, regardless if it's with us or any police department around the country.
So if you're listening to the program and you're thinking, I might be interested, we're going to talk about who really should think about applying and what exactly does it take when we come back. Stay with us. I'm Lisa Adams, and welcome back again to The Insider. My guests are Lieutenant Tom Lennox, Recruitment Coordinator for the Erie Police Department, and Patrol Officer Kayla Pound. We're talking about recruiting for more diversity in the Erie Police Force, but specifically focusing on women today. So if a woman is even thinking about this type of work, what qualifications should she have? Kayla, is there a head and a heart part to this, that you have to have a passion for it? And is there a way that somebody could dip a toe in to even see if they could do something like this?
I think it's definitely something you have a calling for. It's not something you can wake up one day and decide, oh, hey, I might try this. I can't harp enough, and I think Lieutenant Lennox would back me up on this, about the physical aspect of it. Being in shape, really looking hard at being physically prepared for the job as well as mentally prepared.
And we're talking about mental health. I mean, it's a crisis nationally. Even in gun crimes, there's usually some mental health component to that. So how important is it that you have good mental health yourself so you don't lose your cool on calls?
Oh, absolutely important. Patience is huge in this job. You got to have it, or a lot of calls are going to go south on you.
So are there ways, I mean, obviously PAL is giving younger women a chance to be exposed to what police work is all about. But what do you think the most important qualifications are, and who listening to this program should think, maybe I should apply?
You know, again, male or female, and I know we're specifically focused on the women and the ladies, but I tell any officer that you have to, and Kayla again hit the nail on the head. I think police work is one of those things that some people do wake up and say, hey, I'm going to try this, but most of the time you are called to this. If you're a person that, A, loves challenges on a daily basis, you love helping people, you're compassionate, you have empathy, putting yourself in maybe the citizen's shoes, regardless of what crisis they're going through. If you have those abilities and those traits and that skill set already, without any training, you might want to consider being a police officer, because those are all the things that you're going to use. We wear a lot of different hats in this profession. I tell everybody that, very few jobs do you have to, you got to be a counselor, you got to be a mediator, you got to be able to physically diffuse a situation, great communicator. At some points, you got to be an attorney, although, I don't like to use that word, give proper, appropriate legal advice. So if you're
And you have to be willing to take risks, because there are no doubt risks every single day on this job. Again, in the culture that we're living in now, where some people seem to be, even youth seem to be high anxiety or just on a razor's edge of whether they're going to keep it together or not. So, and then again, you've alluded to this, you have to be able to pass not one, but 2 tests, a written test and then the physical test that Kayla has alluded to. And for those who apply, that's coming up in August. Again, they have to take this physical test. Now, this happens to show a lot of men here, but how challenging is the physical test? And remind us, Kayla, is it a little different for female candidates than for the men?
So the test is exactly the same if you're male or female. The requirements for each portion of the test, you know them beforehand. So you have to run 1.5 miles in a certain amount of time. You know that time before you even go into the test. You know all the requirements before you show up.
And so preparation for this is, I mean, the application window is from April through the end of June. And then the tests are not until August, so women have time to get in condition if they're not in condition. So how did you do it? I mean, because you were already doing police work, were you already prepared to do this because of your regular physical regimen?
So I'm normally in the gym at baseline. For somebody that maybe doesn't have a big background on that, I would get the requirements for the physical test and go out and run it in a battery of how you have to do it. Don't run 1.5 miles one day and say, oh, I made the time, and then the next day go and do the sit-ups, because you have to do each section of the test like back to back with a little bit of rest in between.
So running, sit-ups, push-ups, what else is involved?
There's a vertical jump, and I believe there's a 300-meter run.
Pretty demanding. So if you do pass these tests, the written test and the physical test, and they happen on the same day, I believe,
Correct.
You get put onto a list. So how long before that might lead to a job for someone? Because are you looking for a specific number of women? Do you have a certain number of openings?
Yeah, typically what happens after the physical agility component of that test is done on test day, the ones that pass the physical agility, they get invited that afternoon to take the written examination. What happens from there, after they take the written, a list is generated, from the highest score to the lowest score, and they're put in order based upon how you perform in that written. And depending upon how many officers that either A, retire, with the ARP, we got additional funding for ARP, which allowed us to add a couple more additional officers. Depending upon what the needs are for that year, with officers leaving, retiring, and unfortunately in some situations and other circumstances, it depends on how many officers we're going to hire that year.
And you had a couple of new women sworn in just this year, I believe.
Correct.
All right, well, when we come back, we're going to talk about the application process, what the pay is like, and show you the QR code and the website that you can check out if you're interested in applying. Stay with us. Welcome back. We've been talking with Lieutenant Tom Lennox and Patrol Officer Kayla Pound about police recruiting. So the window to apply opens April 3rd. What's the application like? Should it take somebody a long time to fill it out? And then talk a little bit about the pay and the benefits, because it's a good paying job.
Yes, correct. So as soon as the application process is fairly simple. You go onto the police department website, go to the recruiting section. It'll take you right to the application itself. So it's a pretty simple process. With regards to our benefits, our pay, when you first get hired, all Class A patrolmen, they start off at $51,000 and some change. After 48 months, you get a bump in pay, which we call that our Class B pay. Then after 5 years of service, they get bumped up to our Class A pay, which is a pretty significant jump.
Yeah, you can see some of the numbers there on the graphic. And so there is also a QR code that we'll show you here now. You can click on this. You can also find it on the website. You'll see there's a QR code there too for the Erie Fire Department. We'll be talking about women in firefighting here in the city of Erie in a couple of weeks on The Insider. And as Lieutenant Lennox said, you can find information about applying and the QR code too on the city's website. I did it just by searching Erie Police Recruitment, and this came up. And again, all this information is available to you about pay, benefits, what you need to know about the test and applying. Again, the window opens April 3rd, closes June 30th, not just for women, but Kayla, last pitch here. Why would you encourage interested women to apply?
I think kind of like what Lieutenant Lennox hit on, sometimes women just have a different perspective, whether it's at a call or sometimes certain incidents, somebody might not want to talk to a male officer. So I think getting more women interested and on the force is going to be a game changer.
And as you said, you really love what you're doing every single day.
Yeah.
In spite of the challenges of it all.
Right.
Yeah. And so how many people are you hoping apply here?
Well, I mean, I'm hoping to get over 150 to 175 interested candidates in our community and outside the community as well.
And you're working on not just adding women to the force to improve diversity, but people of color as well?
Yes, correct. I mean, our diversity numbers in terms of increasing the diversity within our department has increased significantly over the last 3 or 4 years. Our next 10 hires, 6 out of the 10 are going to be African American females and so on. So it's working.
Important too, so that the people on the police force look like the people in the community that they serve as
Correct.
well.
Correct.
Well, Kayla Pound and Lieutenant Lennox, thank you both so much for being with us. If you have an idea that you'd like us to explore on The Insider, just email me at ladams@erienewsnow.com and join us again next time for The Insider.